Hi, I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. I want to use my library more because I think we all should use our library more. So I've made some prompts and tried to read every month from my library. For February, I got two prompts. One is the book club prompt, which is a book that has been nominated or used for a reading circle or a book club. And I read We, and I do not know how to pronounce that name, Yevgeny Zamyatin. He was a writer who wrote during the Soviet Union, very early in the Soviet Union, very I think almost straight after the Soviet Union was established, because I think this book was from the 1920s or something. This is a dystopia, and it's a dystopian culture where we, the center, the populace, is ruling. And there are very strict what you can and cannot do as an individual, because the social group is so high. And what's also funny is that We is also the inspiration for example, Orwell's 1984. And I didn't know that when I was reading it, but I kept thinking, this reminds me of 1984. But Orwell was very open that this had been his inspiration for 1984. And I haven't read Brave New World, and Huxley did say that, no, this wasn't the inspiration for Brave New World. And apparently Orwell fought with Huxley because Huxley denied that We had been an inspiration for A Brave New World. All three sort of dystopian aspects. And if you only look at the plot, especially in regard to 1984, We and 1984 are very similar. So you have a dystopian where there are very strict rules of what you can and cannot do, and an everyday man meets a woman that there is something different with, and she helps him realize that the dystopian culture that they are a part of is negative and they should fight the system. The difference with 1984 and We, at least in a lower thematic level, is that 1984 is much more about the authoritarian systems. So it's much more about people in power who use that political power to gain control, for example, with doublespeak, and the way politicians or leaders can control it. In We, on at least the basis level, it's much more about the social culture. It's much more about the collective, at least at first. What I thought was interesting was that when you read the book and when you sort of delved into the book, if you allowed the book to actually talk to you, I started wondering in what regard is actually this about the collective, and or in which way are they actually is he actually talking about authoritarian systems who use the collective to rule the populace? So in which way is this really about sort of peer pressure, or in which way are someone abusing the fact that we are social creatures to rule them by fear and terror? And that I think might be the sort of one of the main interesting discussions within this book. That doesn't really mean that I think that 1984 isn't a separate type of book. They are very similar, but they are different styles. They're not different styles. They're very similar in that sense. But what Orwell does in 1984 is almost much more political oriented, much more these are authoritarian leaders that we chose in some sense, and then they gained the system after they were chosen. While this is much more about how we can be abused by someone because we have this innate need for community and closeness and people. But also the interesting with regard to the relationship between the main character, who is the one who is writing the book, so we're getting the story from his perspective, is that despite him being very oriented to the collective and to society, and we need to do our duty because we need to be a part of something bigger, he also is quite lonely. And that is sort of what is sort of picked up from this woman that he meets, that he gets this relationship with. So she sort of invokes something in him that, for example, he talks about that in this society, because sexual desire is a biological need, the way the society deals with that is that you will go to your doctor will test you in regard to hormone levels, in regard to sexual need, and then you will be given almost like a coupon, and then you go to sex workers, and those sex workers will then sort of do the deed with you so that you will have that desire met and that need met. But it's very clinical in the way that they're talking about it. So it's desire because you need to have sex, rather than sex being something that binds two people together. So there is a very interesting clinical aspect of the interactions between people in the society, despite the society being so collective oriented. So surprisingly enough, when I'm saying that he wrote this as part of the Soviet culture, you could start thinking about this as a critique of the Soviet society. But you should read it for yourself and make up your own minds in regard to this. Absolutely one of the classics when it comes to science fiction books, for a reason. The next prompt I had was the letter I. So I got a random letter. So I generated the letter I. And then I picked a book based on the author's last name. And I there read Rita, Indiana, the son of Saturn. So this is, she is a Dominican author. And the book is about a man who is the son of a very elite man who is in Dominica, and the son is a junkie, and he is sent to Cuba to get clean. And Saturn's son is a reference to the Roman and Latin mythology in regard to Zeus or Jupiter being eaten by his, or not being eaten by his father. So I don't know necessarily with the Latin, but in the Greek mythology, Zeus was the son of a proto-god, And the proto-god had been told that his child, his son, would conquer him. So he decides that every time his wife gets pregnant and gives birth, he eats the child. And the mother gets so sick of this that she wraps a stone in the child's clothes, gives that to her husband. He eats that stone, and then she hides Zeus away. And when Zeus then grows up, he ends up killing his father and freeing all of his brothers and sisters, who are then the Greek gods. And Saturn's son is sort of the play on how these are the same stories, but just given different names in the Latin mythology. So by using this as a theme, and this story comes up a bit in all of this, so you start to sort of question if what is actually going on here with the relationship between the main person, who is this junkie, and his father, who was a revolutionary in Dominica, has therefore gotten into power, and what he is now doing to his son. So while the book starts with, poor Pa, having a son who clearly has not been able to deal with a life of luxury, because the main character has never sort of felt poverty, he hasn't been abused, he is spoiled and started doing drugs and became an addict. But because you, of course, keep getting fed the story of a father wanting to eat his children and a mother having to hide away her youngest because she's sick of having her children eaten, it's a brilliant way of us starting to ask a few questions in regard to what is actually going on, especially when we realize what is happening in Cuba with the doctor that is treating the main person, and what is the doctor actually doing. This is my second Rita Indiana story. I've also read Tentacle. Tentacle is much more scientific, weird. So it jumps through time. There isn't really a clear narrative. And the book is brilliant, absolutely. This is much more down to earth and realistic. So in that way, it's very different. But what she does in this book, as she did with the other one, is, of course, asking questions of the people that we tend to look down to. So in Tentacle, it was druggies and sex workers, and us asking the questions, what is actually going on here, rather than just condemning them. And in this, it's a person who has grown up in the lap of luxury, who has become addicted to drugs, and us questioning rather than just judging. Another theme that is very clear in both of the books, and some have pointed out maybe is a part of her literary oeuvre, is also this relationship between the revolutionary generation that the father in this book is a part of, and the generation who grew up after the revolutionary generation. And that relationship between those two generations might not be the healthiest relationship. That this idea that I just want things to be better for the next generation, and I fought all of this and did all of this so that you could have a better life, might not be as altruistic as can be presented at times. And I don't necessarily think that she, of course, puts it in a very historical and cultural context within these specific revolutionary ideas. But the whole discussion that the purpose is that the next generation should have it better than I had, that my children should do better and have it better than what I did. Most people will say, of course, that's the ideal. Of course, we want that. And yet, when you sort of look behind it and sort of look at people's reactions to some of these things, it might not be as crystal clear and altruistic. And of course, we want what's better for someone else. So that was the 2 books I read for February. And now I'm going to go and get my prompts for March. I have done notes, and I have 8 different prompts that I have created, and I'm picking them 2 at a time, and therefore some prompts will go 3 times, or all of them will be 3 times. So I'm going to pick that prompt, and I'm going to pick that prompt. And the first prompt is random number Dewey Decimal. So the Dewey Decimal system is a system that a lot of libraries use when it comes to their non-fiction books. So here I would just do a random number and pick a book based on that. So give me a moment. I'll need to get my phone, and then I'll pick a random number. So here is the random number generator, and I'll just pick a number, and they picked number 930. So I'll go to the library and I'll look at their nonfiction Dewey Decimal on 930 and pick a book based on that. And the second prompt I had was film plus book. Loved this prompt from last year. I'm going to pick a film based on a book, and I'll watch the film and I'll read the book, and I'll do a form of comparison. That's not really the idea to see how they stack up to one another, but to sort of see how it is to see the same story from 2 different mediums. So that's the 2 prompts I'm going to have for next month, and thank you for listening to me screaming into the void.